Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second edition of Financial Algebra, Advanced Algebra with Financial Applications. My name is Rob. I taught for 40 years at North Shore High School, and my first assignment was 4 classes of what was then a pre-algebra consumer mathematics course. By the new millennium, this course had morphed into financial algebra.
And I am Rich Scroy. Looking back at my 40-year resume, you might think I had a hard time holding a job, but that really wasn't the case. I liked the idea of exploring different levels in mathematics education. I began as a high school math teacher. Then my career spanned grades K through graduate school as a teacher, a chairperson, a curriculum coordinator, and assistant professor of math and math education. In the last 10 years before retirement, I decided to go full circle and come back to doing what I knew I always loved. I was a full-time math teacher at Fox Lane High School, where among other courses, I had the opportunity for each of those years to teach financial algebra, the course Rob and I co-authored.
We have 4 decades of experience teaching finance to high school mathematics students. And the books that we wrote all started out as high school courses first, and then, based on that success, textbooks were subsequently published.
Along with our published textbooks, we have written numerous articles for journals across the country. In addition, we have presented at local, state, regional, and national conferences. The thread that runs through all of those endeavors is our belief that teachers can build confidence, competence, and interest in mathematics through the use of applications.
We are going to begin this presentation with an icebreaker. It is called, What Do You Know? What Should You Know? It is similar in format to what we offer our students the first day of the financial algebra course. For students who have been previously disenfranchised with mathematics, the engaging survey experience is a deliberate departure from the typical first mathematics class after summer vacation, which usually involves reviewing material from the previous year. The survey questions you will be responding to today are designed for an adult audience, but we are sure you will see how age-appropriate pop culture questions for your students can easily be substituted. The combination of finance questions and pop culture questions will have the students realize that they are noticeably deficient on information that will be important to them as adults. And the financial algebra course they signed up for will give them the tools they will need. Here's how our survey will work. A question will be posed. You will have 10 seconds to respond, talk it over with a colleague, and write your answer down. After the 10 seconds, a bell will ring, and the answer will be posted.
What is the name of the award given for excellence in the motion picture industry? Go. And the Oscar goes to... Yes, it's the Oscar. What is the name of the longest-running television comedy sketch show that started airing in 1975? Live from New York, it's Saturday night. Name this device, and what is the first thing you need to say to activate it? Go. I bet you know this one. This is the Amazon Echo, and all we need to do is say Alexa, and sometimes anything that sounds like Alexa. Name the popular vacation destination that is mentioned twice in this famous line. What happens in blank stays in blank. It's Vegas. What is the average daily balance and how is it used for calculations on your credit card statement? Go. Okay, so even though I'm not there, I'm guessing there was a lot of silence in the room. And the reason is that not many people really know what the average daily balance is or what it's used for. The average daily balance is the average of each of the ending daily balances for an entire billing cycle on your credit card. So if your billing cycle is 30 days, what the companies do is they find the average of the ending balances for each of the days, and then they use that average to calculate the finance charge. The finance charge is calculated using that average daily balance and the monthly percentage rate. How much would $1,000 grow into at 100% interest compounded continuously in 1 year? Go. Continuous compounding has its own formula. Informally, it's known as the PERT formula, B equals PE to the RT. And when we substitute $1,000 in at 100% interest, we come up with the beginning digits of E itself. What is the difference between APR and APY? Go. APR stands for annual percentage rate, and APY stands for annual percentage yield, but there's more of a difference than just the names. Banks use the compound interest formula to calculate the interest on your savings account. The APR is the percentage rate that is used in the compound interest formula. If they were to use the simple interest formula, the percentage in that formula would be the APY, the annual percentage yield. But the interesting thing is that they don't use the simple interest formula, and yet when they quote you a percentage rate in advertisements about certificates of deposits or savings account, they more often than not will quote the APY and not the APR. So beware. The actual percentage rate that you are getting is not what's quoted in the advertisement. It's the APR, not the APY. What was the highest CD savings rate paid in the 1980s? Go. The answer to this one is unbelievable. Indeed, it was 17%. Imagine that, getting 17% interest on the money that you put in the 1980s into a certificate of deposit. And not only were you getting 17% interest, you also got a small appliance. The banks wanted to lure people in. It was pretty incredible. But the interest rates were high for savings accounts. The mortgage rates were high too. What was the highest federal income tax rate in 1963? Go. This is another unbelievable one. It was 91%. 91%. There are 3 categories shown here: married filing jointly, married filing separately, and head of household. And the last marginal tax rate in each of those categories is 91%. So for example, someone married filing jointly would have to pay 91% tax on anything they made over $400,000. Now keep in mind, $400,000 was a lot of income in 1963, so only the very wealthy paid that amount. But still, that was a lot of money. What is a FICO score? What does FICO stand for? And why is it so important? A FICO score is a credit score used to determine credit risk. It was created by the Fair Isaacs Corporation and hence FICO. It is important for consumers to both know their FICO score and how to improve that FICO score, since it informs lenders how likely you are to repay them if they give you a loan or credit. In some circumstances, it is also used to set the interest rate you'll pay. So see myfico.com for more information. What is a back-end ratio, and why is it so important for you to know? Go. A back-end ratio has to do with debt. A back-end ratio is a debt-to-income ratio. It's very important if you go to get a mortgage. For a mortgage, your total monthly debt obligation should not exceed 36% of your monthly gross income.
The mixture of open-ended discussion, levity, and smiles from the pop culture questions is the perfect contrast to the finance questions, which will generally puzzle the students. You can ask students to write pop culture questions for you the previous school year so they are ready for the first day of school. The survey sets the stage for the inspiration to learn about concepts that students will need as they become young adults. How does financial algebra align with the Common Core state standards for mathematics? Take a look at this quote from the Common Core document. A menu of challenging options should be available for students after their 3rd year of mathematics, and all students should be strongly encouraged to take mathematics in all years of high school. Traditionally, students are expected to take pre-calculus. This is a good and worthy goal, but should not be the only option. An array of challenging options will keep mathematics relevant for students and give them a new set of tools for their futures. And from this you can really see how financial algebra fits.
Financial algebra is a mathematical modeling course. As longtime high school teachers, we have always embraced financial applications. Since finance and algebra are a very natural fit, the course is heavily algebra-based. The financial applications are incredibly rich in algebra, and the financial topics are inherently relevant to young adults. Through the use of a variety of technologies, including, but not limited to, graphing calculators, spreadsheets, and online graphing websites such as Desmos, financial situations that affect students' lives now and in their futures are better understood using algebraic models.
The course addresses selected topics in college preparatory mathematics under 11 financial umbrellas as shown by the app icons on the book's cover. Chapter 1 is on discretionary expenses. Chapter 2, Banking. Chapter 3, Consumer Credit. Chapter 4, Owning an Automobile. Chapter 5, An Introduction to Employment Basics. Chapter 6, Income Taxes. Chapter 7, Independent Living. Chapter 8, Investing, Stocks, and Bonds. Chapter 9, Starting Your Own Business. Chapter 10, Planning for Retirement. And Chapter 11, Budgeting.
The structure of financial algebra is different from that in a traditional math course and textbook. Students are better able to experience the interrelatedness of mathematical topics and procedures because these topics and procedures resurface in a variety of forms in different financial contexts. The revisiting, refining, reviewing, and building upon math topics offers students multiple opportunities to find patterns, to make conjectures based on prior experiences with the topics, and to extrapolate to new situations because of previous exposure to the mathematics. For example, scatter plots and regression analysis are first introduced in the discretionary expenses chapter as a means to study spending situations. Students then revisit the topic as they study loan calculations, automobile depreciation, income taxes, home rental and ownership, stock purchases and trends, and the business model throughout the rest of the course.
The finance topics drive the mathematics. The mathematics topics included in the curriculum were introduced as they were needed. Financial applications are a realistic setting for practicing problem-solving strategies. Students are always reminded to use their financial number sense to question outcomes to problems they solve.
Within the financial contexts, students are offered a variety of ways to view, interpret, and work with mathematics. They are encouraged to model situations using symbolic notation. Often, problem-solving situations can be better understood using graphical representations, which may lead to an increased understanding of the symbolic notation. In some instances, geometric models can be used to solve algebraic problems. But the common problem-solving thread throughout the entire course is that each and every problem can be studied, analyzed, and deconstructed verbally to get a better understanding of it.
What is the philosophy behind the financial algebra program? Well, the program offers students a chance to learn and practice mathematics and problem solving in a context of real-world topics. This is content that every high school student needs. The financial algebra course specifically addresses the needs and age-level interests of struggling students. The program gives schools the opportunity to convey the utility, beauty, and practicality of mathematics to all students.
We are often asked to explain what drove us to create the course and the textbook, and to explain what factors might be hidden from view that we took into consideration in the process. We wanted to know, is the student ready for this level of mathematics and mathematical inquiry? We wanted to see how we could assess and build in that readiness. What age grade would be more responsive to the financial topics presented? What financial topics are of interest to high school students, and at what age grade should they be introduced to further spark that interest? In traditional math courses, the context serves the mathematics. That is, traditionally, students study the mathematics and processes and then apply that to a variety of situations. In this course, we turn that around. Mathematics serves the context. The mathematics is taught on an as-needed basis in topics where its use is most appropriate. What does a student need to have mastered before approaching a new topic? More importantly, how can we help students build on whatever level of mastery they are at while exploring this new topic?
Since we are full-time teachers in the trenches, we always carefully considered the student's ability level and experience in previous mathematics courses. The financial setting is a natural for alternative assessment, projects, and other evaluation options, so grades are not strictly based on timed tests. Since many struggling students need frequent review, every chapter spirals previously learned material. We also considered the placement of the finance topics with respect to the school calendar. So, for example, the unit on income taxes is appropriately placed after the W-2 forms arrive. The students' engagement level in our classes led us to embrace the reading, writing, interpreting, conjecturing, and discussion that are essential elements to understanding finance topics.
Fiscal responsibility and financial education are undeniably related. The call for personal quantitative financial literacy can routinely be found in the news, in the private sector, and in governmental initiatives. Mathematical money management models offer students financial learning opportunities that can anchor the curriculum. They also can build fiscal confidence and competence. The purpose of financial algebra is to help students see, enjoy, and implement mathematics in their everyday lives.
We've all heard that age-old question, when are we ever going to use this? The answer is, for the rest of your life. In this next part of our presentation, we are going to take a look at the chapters in the book and the structure, features, and benefits of the chapters and the individual sections.
In the introductory pages of the chapter, you will find the table of contents. The table of contents lists the chapters and sections by their financial topic names, along with the introductory page numbers for those chapters and sections. In the green portion of the table of contents, you will find a list of the mathematical topics that are both taught and used in the respective chapters. This presentation will give you an overview of the table of contents for each of the chapters, along with a sample problem in those chapters. Chapter 1, Discretionary Expenses. The course begins with an in-depth study of expenses using the tools of statistics. Students need to understand which statistical tools are appropriate, when to use them, and how to interpret them in the numerous financial contexts in this course. The thread of discretionary and essential expenses in this chapter allows you as the teacher to use student as well as internet-researched data to enhance the problem-solving situations in need of statistical analysis. On the left, you'll see the 5 sections of this chapter. In the green area, we list the mathematical topics that are introduced and used throughout the discretionary expense chapter.
In example 3 from section 1.4, students expand their knowledge of the normal curve by learning how to convert raw scores to z-scores.
Chapter 2, Banking Services. This chapter examines a broad array of banking services. Students focus on accuracy, planning, and verification of data both in the classroom with the activities presented here and in real life. There are 10 sections in this chapter. They focus on ways to use the banks to access your money, to save your money, and to make investments. The mathematics includes topics such as arithmetic sequences, exponential equations, and logarithmic form.
In example 3 from section 2.5, students use the compound interest formula, which was derived previously in chapter 2.
Chapter 3, Consumer Credit. Traditionally, living within your income meant that if you needed to borrow money to buy something, you really couldn't afford it. Nowadays, it means you should borrow what you can afford to repay. In this chapter, students learn that credit is based on honesty, responsibility, and the ability to pay back a debt. The 7 sections of this chapter focus on the mathematics of borrowing, in particular the mathematics of loans such as student loans. It also focuses on the mathematics of credit cards. The mathematical topics include functions, regression analysis, and logarithms.
In example 2 from section 3.3, students use the monthly payment formula. Notice how careful they must be when substituting, and especially with the parentheses when they enter numbers into their calculators.
Chapter 4, Automobile Ownership. This chapter offers 9 sections pertaining to the automobile. Students explore formulas of varying degrees of mathematical sophistication as they work on pricing structures, insurance issues, automobile depreciation, and data that can assist them in making wise and safe driving decisions. The mathematical topics in this chapter include functional analysis, probability, statistics, graphing, and geometry.
Students create piecewise functions in every chapter of the book. Example 4 from section 4.1 requires students to do the reverse, to interpret a given piecewise function verbally.
Chapter 5, Employment Basics. In this chapter, students explore the world of work from the day they begin to look for their first job to the distant time when they will be concerned about retirement benefits. We do this so that they can be aware of the many aspects of the working world. The mathematical topics in this chapter focus on functions, including piecewise functions.
Example 8 from section 5.2 serves as a spiraled review of geometric series in a new financial context. Geometric series were originally introduced in Chapter 2.
Chapter 6, Income Taxes. In this chapter, students use income tax data to create and interpret equations and piecewise functions that model our progressive tax system. The mathematics used in this chapter give students the tools to model and understand the income tax system both algebraically and graphically.
Income tax schedules have baffled taxpayers for decades. Example 2 from section 6.1 is part of a gradual, scaffolded development that helps students understand the relationship between these tax schedules and piecewise functions.
Chapter 7, Independent Living. Here, students use a variety of skills to investigate the processes of looking for a place to live, to understand the layout of a living space, and to calculate and compare the short-term and long-term costs and benefits of renting or buying a home. The chapter teaches and uses mathematical topics from algebra, geometry, and trigonometry.
A home buyer is concerned about the chance of trees in his property falling on the house in a storm. Example 5 from section 7.7 shows how a clinometer, which was a student-created reality check project, can be used to compute the height of a tree.
Chapter 8. The Stock Market. Most students are familiar with the existence of the stock market, but unfamiliar with how it works. The concept of risk and reward is a constant presence in this chapter. Students use mathematics to understand market events and make wise decisions about personal investments. The chapter explores stock market data, stock market trends, ways in which stock market data are displayed and analyzed, and calculations of the return on stock investments. Students use mathematics and analysis to examine stock market data, make predictions, and pictorially chart market activity.
In example 5 from section 8.4, linear regression spirals back again as students chart stock prices on 36 consecutive days.
Chapter 9. Modeling a Business. In business, it is important to plan ahead, to predict, and to calculate and weigh all options when making decisions. In this chapter, mathematics is used to model a startup business. The first two sections, Inventions and Market Research, introduce students how to use statistical tools to make business decisions. The sections that follow trace the path of products from an idea all the way into the hands of the consumer. Experimental design, hypothesis testing, equations, system of equations, and linear programming are among the many mathematical topics taught and used in this chapter.
In Chapter 9, students model how to start their own business. Example 5 from section 9.5 models the relationship between expense and revenue functions.
Chapter 10. Planning for Retirement. This chapter focuses on retirement vocabulary and formulas. The purpose of the chapter is to assist students in realizing that although retirement may be in their very distant future, planning for it should not be. There are things they can do as soon as they get their first job that will help them to be financially secure in their retirement. The 5 sections of the chapter explore a variety of retirement income options using statistics, probability, and both functional and pictorial representations.
Example 3 from section 10.1 shows students how they can prepare for their retirement goals, since this preparation is best started at a young age.
Chapter 11. Prepare a Budget. In this chapter, students are introduced to typical utility bills owners must pay. These include, but are not limited to, electricity, gas, water, cell phones, internet providers, and cable television. Budgeting includes annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly, and weekly expenses. This chapter shows students how to organize and track these expenses. Students learn how to use mathematics to create budgets, organize budgets, interpret budgets, and pictorially represent budgets. Students learn how to use matrices to organize, analyze, and perform calculations with budget information.
After learning about hundreds of different consumer expenditures over the entire financial algebra course, students learn how to put together a budget in Chapter 11. Example 2 from section 11.5 uses matrices to explore budgeting.
Now that you know the financial and mathematical topics in the book, let's take a look at how the textbook is structured and the features within the chapters. Every chapter begins with the chapter opening page. It lists the chapter name, the chapter sections, and it serves as a way to spark interest in the sections to follow. Each chapter contains an opening quote. The quote has been specifically selected so that it can be a springboard for discussion at the beginning of this chapter. The author of the quote is always cited, and the first question of the chapter asks what students think the author meant in the quote. Once that discussion is complete, the students are encouraged to read the opening chapter topic introduction, which sets the stage for the sections to follow.
The Really, Really chapter opener features engaging and historical facts. This Really, Really, from Chapter 4, looks at the first Corvette, which came out in 1953. Only 300 were produced, and they came in only one color, white. The Really, Really Revisited is an end-of-chapter mathematical feature that follows up the Really, Really chapter opener. This Really, Really Revisited from Chapter 4 is a longitudinal look at gas prices over the past 7 decades.
Each section opens with a quote, a warm-up, objectives, key terms, an essential question, and an introduction. The list of objectives provides the main learning outcomes for the section. The warm-up offers an opportunity to assess prior knowledge. The quote can be used in a number of ways. You can have a class discussion about what the author meant before the material of the section is taught. Or it can be used as an assessment tool to see if students can interpret it using what they have just learned in the section. The interpretation of the section quote using what has just been learned is always the first question at the end of section assessments. Speaking of quotes, let's stop for a moment and do an activity. We would like you to work together with a partner and together select one of the 3 quotes listed on the slide. Discuss how the quote might stimulate mathematics conversation within your class. To give you some context, the section in which the quote appears is listed under each quote. We will now give you about 2 minutes to do this activity. Go ahead. Okay, let's get back together now. Now I'm going to ask you to turn to a different person and together discuss the quotes that each of you picked. You have 2 more minutes. Okay, let's get back together. Hopefully, this activity has helped you see how using section-related quotes can offer you another opportunity to extend the lesson material.
Skills and Strategies offers model problems that graduate in difficulty and feature step-by-step solutions that include technology.
After each Skills and Strategies example, you will always find a Check Your Understanding activity. Check Your Understanding allows students to immediately practice the concept on their own. The questions are similar to the example and help them gauge their understanding of the skills being taught. Sometimes you will also find an Extend Your Understanding activity. Here, Extend Your Understanding provides an opportunity to solve a more challenging yet related problem.
Carefully developed applications at the end of each lesson require students to apply concept learned in the section.
At the end of each chapter, there is a chapter assessment section. The first component of this assessment area is Real Numbers, You Write the Story. This feature asks students to examine and write a story focused around information given in a non-traditional graph. This gives students an opportunity to be creative while at the same time sharpening their graphic interpretation skills. Research tells us that problem posing is equally as important as problem solving, and yet, traditionally, we don't offer students opportunities to problem pose in our math class. The feature, What's the Problem, provides students with a problem-posing activity related to a chapter problem. Students are given an equation or formula featured in the chapter with numerical substitutions for each variable. The students then have to think backwards and create the problem using the numbers that have the solution modeled by the given equation.
The reality check projects are an effective form of alternative assessment. They give students an additional avenue to show what they've learned so their grades are not solely based on timed tests.
You will find meaningful applications at the end of each section and at the end of each chapter, which require students to apply concepts taught throughout the section and then finally the chapter. You will find no naked number problems here. Every problem is written in context.
The accompanying practice problems book is perfectly aligned with the textbook and offers hundreds of additional problems teachers can use for homework, classwork, and other supplemental needs. In this part of our presentation, we will look at some suggested instructional strategies to help put the philosophy and course structure into practice. Specifically, let's look at how material is presented in the book, how students can practice what they have learned, and how teachers can assess student mastery. How is the student who has traditionally struggled accommodated by the learning strategies in financial algebra? How can students practice what they have learned? How can teachers differentiate instruction? How can learning be assessed in class and with homework? The Skills and Strategies feature in each section develops problems in a gradual fashion, checking student understanding after each new step is introduced. Multi-step problems are broken down into smaller, digestible components to instill student confidence and raise student skill level. Student success is measured by the completion of practice problems and other alternative assessments. Let's take a look at examples of these ideas using sections 2.4 and 2.5 on compound interest. In section 2.3, the students learned about simple interest. In section 2.4, this idea gets extended into compound interest, but not using the compound interest formula. Let's look at example 5 from section 2.4. Jennifer has a bank account that compounds interest daily at a rate of 1.2%. On July 11th, the principal is $1,234.98. She withdraws $200 for a car repair. She deposits a $34 check from her health insurance company. On July 12th, her $345.77 paycheck is directly deposited to her account. What is her balance at the end of the day on July 12th? The book tells the student to organize the information specified in the problem. You can create a blank table and make multiple copies for classroom use, or you can download a blank template from the Instructor Companion website. At this point, students understand what getting interest on your interest means, since they actually saw the previous day's interest become part of the next day's principal. Notice the verbal instructions combined with the filling in of the table entries for the first day only. Also notice how the full sentence explanations allow students to refer to the text if they need help in the future. We encourage students to actually read their mathematics books. After students get an intuitive feel for how compound interest means getting interest on your interest, section 2.5 starts the development of the compound interest formula with the usual section opener features. In example 1, the formula is derived from scratch. This is a portion from the solution to example 1. While many students might forget the derivation, and that's okay, they will remember that the formula was developed in class and not just handed to them without explanation, assuring its logic, authenticity, and believability. As always, a check your understanding problem ensures that the teacher and students do not move on until the previous skill is mastered. Remember, every single skills and strategies model problem in the entire financial algebra book is followed up by a check your understanding problem. Model problems combine with the check your understanding and extend your understanding problems to scaffold learning at a comfortable pace for students who have traditionally struggled. Each chapter has dozens of practice problems. Notice how there are no naked number problems. Every problem requires reading because every problem has a financial context. We are preparing students for the real world. You can purchase a paperback practice problem supplement, which gives the teacher even more options for assessing and assigning homework. The sections in the practice problem supplement match the sections in the textbook. Some teachers choose to use the practice problems book as a homework resource to be kept exclusively at home.
We are now going to share with you some how-tos that we have gathered together from our many years of teaching this course. We will examine how to plan productively, how to focus on language, how to manage homework, how to use the reality check projects, and finally, how to differentiate instruction. What can you do to prepare to teach each chapter? First of all, examine your syllabus carefully. Get to know not only what you need to teach today, but also in the future. Take advantage of the annotated Teacher's Edition. We specifically wrote this with you as the teacher in mind. You will find that we speak to you throughout the Teacher Edition offering you many specific suggestions to assist you in your planning. Before you start a chapter, read it through and do the examples. This will help you help students navigate through the chapter. Decide on how you will use the skills and strategies examples, the check your understandings, and the extend your understandings. How will you be delivering the lesson? What pedagogical methods will you employ? When, where, and what technologies will you and your students use? Select which projects you will want students to choose from. There are about 15 field-tested projects at the end of each chapter. Select 5 or 6 and have students pick 1, 2, or even 3 based upon how you are incorporating projects into the course. Use the suggested discussion points offered in the Teacher's Edition. Familiarize yourself with the new vocabulary. Review the end-of-chapter assessments and the ancillary materials. But remember, students will have a lot of financial questions. Some will involve the math, and many will involve the laws and norms of finance. You will be saying many times in this course, "I don't know, but I will find out for you right away." If you have skimmed through the textbook already, you will notice that it is very language dense. This is purposeful. The real world is filled with language that forces us to make decisions every day. We felt it important to incorporate that into the course. Some of your students may be ready for it, and others may need your assistance with both the math and the language. Throughout the book, we have built in many opportunities for students to listen, read, write, speak, and practice. How can you do that? Well, let's start with a section. Often we make assumptions that students understand vocabulary words that seem common to us, but not to them. Once I heard a teacher say that she opened up this lesson by asking what students thought the stock market was. One student responded by saying, "It's a place to buy and sell cows, goats, and sheep." At first she was perplexed, but then she realized that stock to this student represented livestock, and market was a vending location. So even before you start a lesson, you should access prior knowledge of the topic to make sure vocabulary is understood. You can also do this by having students interpret the quote and pre-assess their knowledge of some of the key terms. For students struggling with language or for whom English is their second language, you might want to go to a dollar store and pick up some old-fashioned address books. Have them enter key terms and definitions alphabetically. If English isn't their primary language, suggest they make entries in English and in their first language. You will notice there is also a warm-up activity at the beginning of each session. This is there to test for prerequisite skills, but it can also be used as a great problem-posing activity. Have students write and answer a problem similar to the warm-up. Use the essential question as a pre-instructional tool. Then bring it back at the end of the session to see how differently students answer it. We encourage all types of reading in this class. Read alone, read aloud, group read, restating, discussing, and taking and reviewing notes. Often, math notebooks are filled with what students have copied from the board. To encourage students to add context to their notes, use this notebook scavenger hunt activity. Students should be dating their notes. You need to make sure they understand that right from the beginning of the school year. Then at any given point during the school year, you might say something like, "Open up your notebooks." On October 16th, there was an investment example with Jackie purchasing 700 shares of stock. What company did she purchase stock in? What you're forcing the students to do is go back into their notes, find that particular date, and hopefully they embellished the mathematics with the context of the problem. After a number of these, they will get the hint that's what they need to do with their notes. So what about homework? My co-author Rob had an article published in a New York newspaper entitled "Homework is Not Fluff." Basically, he outlined the importance of homework as an evaluative and practice tool. We agree that students are very busy and their after-school lives are filled with activities, but the judicious use of homework can be a very important part of every lesson. Homework policy decisions. The age-old questions about whether you should check homework, grade homework, or collect homework are still around. The answers to those questions are personal. What works for me may not work for you. But the policy suggestions we have could work regardless of what you do with that homework. First of all, we suggest that you focus on quality rather than quantity. If you can't review it the following day because you do not have enough time, then don't assign it. Students place value on homework when they see how you incorporate it into the lesson. It is better to assign 2, 3, or 4 problems that can be reviewed in class than to overwhelm students with a truckload of homework that they may not see mentioned the following day. Vary how you review the homework. Students can be told the night before who will be displaying their problem for the class, or they can be asked to put a problem up on the board as they walk in. Students can work in small groups to review homework. You can assign a similar problem for students to do on the homework, and they are allowed to use their homework assignment from the previous night to solve it. You can then collect it and get a good sense of how they understood the homework. You can even put up a solution to a homework problem and ask them to find the deliberate error that you made. There's many ways to handle homework. Collecting homework is always a big issue. You want to hold students accountable, but how can you collect and check homework from every student in every class? Here's an idea. I call it the die roll random selection method. That's a mouthful, but you'll see it works. Assign numbers 1 through 6 randomly to all students in the class. Before reviewing the homework, roll a die and reveal the homework number that will be collected on that day. Only the students who hold the rolled number will have their homework collected that day. Now, distribute some different color pen. I found that green pens work the best because none of my students would ever write in green. So distribute green pens to students who will be handing in their homework. They are to make corrections on their homework using only those green pens. Then, collect the homework only from the students whose number was rolled. Then it's up to you. You can grade them at your discretion. This cuts down on the number of homeworks you have to look at, but everyone has to be on their toes because they never know when their number is going to be rolled. Now we will look at some alternative assessments that extend the learning beyond the classroom. They are known as reality check projects. What are they? Reality check projects are long-term assignments that usually take a few weeks to complete. They can involve research, visual presentations, and/or field work. They need to be addressed at the very beginning of the chapter by you with the students so students know what is expected of them. Some of the projects require chapter knowledge and others do not. The project-based alternative assessments address real-world opportunities by combining mathematics and finance. They are all framed by meaningful and probing questions that employ and encourage technology use. The topics are inherently engaging. They involve reading, writing, researching, presentation, communication, and social skills, and they all align well with local, state, and national standards for mathematical practice. As you will hear in a few slides, the reality check projects also allow for differentiation. They strengthen decision-making skills and are appropriate for all ability levels. They also strengthen time management skills and have a positive effect on achievement and attitude. And if you're so inclined, these projects lend themselves for display at back-to-school and parent finance nights. Oh, by the way, if the student has interacted with community members in order to complete this project, like, for example, they interviewed a real estate agent, or they went to a bank to discuss something with the loan officer there is one more important component to the projects. They have to write a thank you note. They have to be able to put together a cohesive thank you note that expresses their appreciation for the time that was spent with them on the project. There is one more important how-to, and that is how to differentiate instruction in a financial algebra classroom. In her book, How to Differentiate Instruction in Mixed Ability Classrooms, Carol Ann Tomlinson speaks to some of the many things that differentiation addresses. Among those are readiness levels, interests, learning abilities, languages, and backgrounds. You will find all of these to be contributing factors to learning in your classroom as well. Let's take a look at how to differentiate the skills and strategies in a single section. Each section offers a number of examples. As was said before, they graduate in difficulty. Take a look at the skills and strategies for section 4.6, Historical and Exponential Depreciation. There are 7 different examples, each asking different questions requiring different mathematical methods to solve, as shown here in red. Perhaps all of your students may not be ready for all of these. You can pick and choose which you want to be the core of the lesson. Say you want everyone in the class to have a mastery of examples 1, 2, 4, and 5. Or maybe you want to include example 3 in that mastery, which is solving for a variable raised to a fractional power. That's up to you. The whole group instruction can be centered on these, but other students who may be able to work through these at a faster pace or may not even need instruction on these could move out of the lesson when you are working on, say, 2 and 5. Those students would have worked through examples 1, 3, 4 with the entire class, and now, whether individually or in a small group, they can begin their own work on examples 6 and 7, extending the lesson for those who are more able. The check your understanding and the extend your understanding components can also be part of a differentiation plan. You can assign one or both depending upon abilities. If you differentiate the lesson, then you need to consider differentiating both the homework and the practice problem book assignments as well. All of the end of chapter features can be differentiated in a variety of ways. In real numbers, you write the story. Students take on the role of a reporter and are asked to write a short news-type article based on the graph, one of which is shown here. You can differentiate this activity by setting up 3 proficiency levels for the output. You might state, a competent reporter would include the following in the story. A proficient reporter would include the following in that story. And an expert reporter would include the following in that story. Students can self-select and thereby differentiate the activity. In addition to having all students do this worthwhile what's the problem task, you can differentiate it by having some students go back through the chapter and write and answer their own what's the problem. The reality check projects are fertile ground for differentiation. Students can select projects based on interest and ability. They can then take the projects to varying degrees of research and presentation complexity. So there you have it. We've made a number of suggestions throughout these presentations, and we have one more. Keep a digital or print daily journal of your lessons. It doesn't have to be extensive, just thoughts about what went on during those lessons. You can cite successes or make suggestions for changes. You'll thank yourself when you teach this the following year. Good luck, and always feel free to contact us at these email addresses if you have any questions throughout the year.